The coffee cup shattered first, then the silence. Commander Marcus Cole stood frozen in the doorway staring at the woman everyone called Paper Pusher. The woman they mocked daily. The woman with the butterfly tattoo they laughed at 5 seconds ago. His hand rose, trembling. A perfect salute. Commander, a soldier's voice cracked. Why are you saluting the clerk? Cole didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the black orchid inked into her forearm, a symbol only dead operatives carried. You were KIA, he whispered. I attended your funeral. Rachel met his eyes. I know. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss these incredible stories of courage. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Let's see how far this story travels. The tray hit the floor with a sound like a gunshot. Rachel Morgan stood frozen mashed potatoes splattered across her boots, gravy pooling around her feet like something shameful. The mess hall erupted. Laughter bounced off the walls, sharp and cruel, the kind that didn't fade quickly. Nice one, Paper Pusher. Staff Sergeant Derek Walsh's voice cut through the noise, loud enough for everyone to hear, designed to humiliate. He stood 3 tables away, surrounded by his infantry squad, all of them grinning, like they'd just witnessed the funniest thing in their miserable deployment. Rachel didn't move. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes stayed fixed on the mess at her feet. What's the matter, Morgan? Walsh pushed off from his seat and walked toward her, boots heavy on the floor. Too much for you. Can't handle a little lunch without making a disaster. His men laughed harder. Rachel bent down, slowly picking up the tray. Her hands were steady. Too steady. The kind of steady that comes from practice, from years of controlling reactions that could get people killed. I asked you a question, Sergeant. Walsh stopped right in front of her, close enough that she could smell the cigarettes on his breath. You deaf and clumsy. Rachel stood up. She met his eyes for exactly 1 second, long enough to see something flicker in his expression, something like uncertainty, then looked away. No, Sergeant, just clumsy. Damn right you are. Walsh turned to his audience, spreading his arms. This is what they're sending us now, boys. Can't shoot, can't fight, can't even hold a tray. But hey, at least she's got a pretty little tattoo. He grabbed her wrist before she could pull away, yanking her arm up for everyone to see. The black orchid ink gleamed under the fluorescent lights, delicate petals spreading across pale skin. Look at this. Walsh's voice dripped with contempt. What is this supposed to be? Your sorority symbol. You gonna intimidate the enemy with flowers? More laughter. Rachel's face remained expressionless, but something shifted in her posture. A tension that ran deeper than embarrassment. Let go of my arms, Sergeant. Her voice was quiet. Too quiet. The soldiers closest to them stopped laughing. Walsh leaned in. Or what? For a heartbeat, the air between them changed. Rachel's eyes met his again, and this time she didn't look away. Something lived in that gaze, something Walsh had never seen in a supply clerk. Something that made him release her wrist without understanding why. Rachel walked away without another word. The laughter followed her out of the mess hall, but it sounded different now. Uncertain. Like everyone had witnessed something they couldn't quite explain. Private James Chen watched her go. He was 22, fresh out of training, assigned to communications. He'd been at Camp Sentinel for 3 weeks, and in that time, he'd learned exactly one thing: don't get noticed. Stay invisible. Do your job and go home. But Rachel Morgan fascinated him. She was everything the infantry soldiers hated. Quiet, efficient, seemingly soft, she worked in logistics, tracking shipments, and filing manifests. The most dangerous thing she touched was a stapler. And yet, Chen had seen the way she moved, the way she always positioned herself near exits, the way her eyes swept every room she entered, cataloging threats like a machine. These weren't clerk habits. These were something else entirely. He finished his meal quickly and slipped out after her. Rachel's office was a converted storage closet at the back of the supply warehouse. No windows, one door, a desk buried under paperwork, and a lamp that flickered when the generator struggled. She sat in the dim light, hands pressed flat against the desk, breathing slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth, again, again. The trembling started in her fingertips and spread up her arms. She clenched her fist, fighting it, forcing her body to obey. This wasn't the desert. This wasn't Afghanistan. This was a supply closet in Kuwait, and she was safe. She was safe. A knock on the door made her jump. Sergeant Morgan, Chen's voice. Young, hesitant. Rachel wiped her face quickly, straightening her uniform. Come in. The door opened. Chen stood in the entrance, looking like he wasn't sure if he should salute, speak, or run away. Private Chen, what do you need? He hesitated. I saw what happened in the mess hall. I wanted to make sure you were okay. Rachel studied him. He was exactly what he appeared to be. Young earnest, probably raised by parents who taught him to check on people. A good kid. The kind who didn't last long in places like this. I'm fine, Private. Thank you for asking. Chen didn't leave. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Sergeant, can I ask you something? You can ask. That tattoo, the orchid, he pointed at her arm. What does it mean? The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Rachel's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes shuddered closed. It's just a tattoo's Private. Right, of course. Chen nodded quickly, recognizing the wall when he hit it. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Is there anything else? No, Sergeant, He backed toward the door. I'll go. He was almost out when Rachel's voice stopped him. Chen. He turned. Thank you for checking. She almost smiled. Not many people do. Chen nodded and left, closing the door softly behind him. Rachel sat alone in the silence. She pulled her sleeve down over the orchid, covering it completely, and stared at the wall until the trembling finally stopped. 3 days later, a convoy rolled into Camp Sentinel. Rachel was in the warehouse when she heard the engines, heavy vehicles, multiple moving in formation. Military precision. She stepped outside to check the manifest against arrivals, clipboard in hand, and froze. Navy SEALs. A full detachment of them stepping off armored vehicles like warriors descending from Olympus. They moved differently than regular soldiers. Quieter. More aware. Their eyes missed nothing. Rachel's heart slammed against her ribs. She forced herself to breathe, to stay calm, to remember that she was just a supply clerk now, just another face in the crowd. Nobody special, nobody worth noticing. The team's commander emerged last. Commander Marcus Cole, according to the manifest. 48 years old, veteran of more black operations than probably existed in official records. His face was weathered, lined by sun and stress and things that never made it into reports. Rachel ducked back into the warehouse before he could see her, but she wasn't fast enough. Cole's head turned. His eyes swept the area where she'd been standing. A slight furrow appeared between his brows, the expression of someone who had seen something familiar but couldn't place it. He shook it off and continued walking. Rachel leaned against the warehouse wall, clipboard pressed to her chest, pulse pounding in her temples. Her hand moved unconsciously to her forearm, fingers tracing the outline of the orchid through her sleeve. Not now, not here, not like this. She had buried Rachel Morgan 3 years ago, buried her in paperwork and silence, in a logistics assignment so boring that no one would ever look twice. She had made herself invisible, unremarkable, forgettable. And now the only people in the world who could recognize her had just arrived at her doorstep. Walsh noticed the SEALs immediately. Everyone did. They were impossible to ignore, harder, quieter, more dangerous than anyone else on base. Even the most arrogant infantry soldiers gave them space, recognizing predators when they saw them. But Walsh was smarter than most. He saw an opportunity. Boys, he said to his squad that night, those operators are going to need local support while they're here. Logistics, transport, that kind of thing. And guess who runs logistics? His sergeant, a thick-necked man named Briggs, grinned. Paper pusher Morgan. Exactly. Walsh leaned forward, which means anything they need she has to provide. And if she screws up, which she will because she always does, we get front row seats to watch the SEALs tear her apart. What's the play? Walsh smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. We make sure she screws up. A lost shipment here, a wrong form there. Nothing we can get blamed for, but enough to make her look incompetent in front of the most elite operators in the military. Briggs nodded slowly. Walsh, that's brilliant, I know. He stood up, stretching. By the time they leave, Morgan won't just be a joke. She'll be a cautionary tale. The clerk who couldn't handle real soldiers. What Walsh didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that the woman he planned to destroy had once saved the lives of 30 SEALs in a single night. and one of those SEALs was about to recognize her. Commander Cole couldn't sleep. He lay on his bunk in the temporary quarters staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment in his mind. That glimpse outside the warehouse. The woman with the clipboard. Something about the way she moved. He'd spent 25 years reading people. Reading threats, assets, allies, enemies. His survival depended on noticing details others missed, and his instincts were screaming that he'd missed something important. At 0200, he gave up on sleep and went for a walk. Camp Sentinel was quiet at this hour. A few guards on patrol, a few lights burning in the command building, but mostly darkness and silence. Cole walked the perimeter, letting his mind work the problem. The woman, the clipboard, the way she ducked back into the warehouse when she saw him. Why would a supply clerk hide from SEALs, unless she wasn't just a supply clerk? He found himself standing outside the logistics warehouse without remembering deciding to go there. The lights were on inside, dim but visible through the dirty windows. Someone was working late. Cole pushed open the door quietly and stepped inside. The warehouse was cavernous, filled with shelving units stacked high with equipment and supplies. At the far end, a single lamp illuminated a small desk. A woman sat there bent over papers, writing by hand. Cole moved closer, keeping to the shadows. Operator habits that never died. He was 20 feet away when he saw her arm. The sleeve had ridden up while she worked, exposing pale skin and dark ink. A flower, petals spreading across her forearm in a pattern he knew better than his own face. The black orchid. Cole's legs stopped working. His chest seized. For a moment he couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at that tattoo. That was impossible. That was completely, absolutely impossible. Because the only people who wore that symbol were dead. All of them. Every last one except for the SEALs who had survived Operation Silent Thunder. And she wasn't a SEAL. She was something else entirely. Cole must have made a sound, a gasp, a step. Something, because the woman's head snapped up. Her eyes found him in the darkness, and for one frozen moment, they simply looked at each other. Recognition hit him like a bullet. "Morgan!" Rachel's face went white. The pen dropped from her fingers. "You're supposed to be dead." Cole's voice came out hoarse, strangled. "We searched for months. Intelligence said, 'Commander.'" Rachel stood slowly, her chair scraping against the concrete floor. Her hands were shaking. "This isn't, I can explain." "Explain?" Cole took a step forward, then another, drawn toward her like a man toward water in the desert. "You were KIA, official report. Your name is on a wall in Virginia. I stood at your memorial service. I watched your mother." His voice broke. Rachel's eyes were wet. "I know." You know, something shifted in Cole's expression. Grief into confusion. Confusion into anger. 3 years, Morgan. 3 years of thinking you were dead. 3 years of carrying that weight. And you were here alive doing paperwork. It wasn't my choice. Then whose choice was it? Rachel looked away. Her jaw worked silently for a moment before she spoke. After Silent Thunder, I couldn't. She stopped, started again. The things I saw, the things I did, I couldn't go back to who I was before. Intelligence offered me a way out. New identity, new assignment, complete disconnect from everything I was. So you just disappeared. I didn't have a choice. The words exploded out of her, raw and broken. You think I wanted this. You think I wanted to leave everything behind. My family thinks I'm dead, Marcus. My mother visits an empty grave. I've had to live with that every single day. Cole stared at her. The anger was still there, burning in his chest, but underneath it, something else was growing. Something that looked a lot like understanding. Why logistics? He asked finally. Of all places, why here? Rachel wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Because I found something. Weapons moving through Kuwait ending up in the wrong hands. Someone on this base is running a trafficking operation. I volunteered for the assignment. You're running an investigation alone? I'm running surveillance, gathering evidence. When I have enough, I pass it up the chain. Cole shook his head slowly. Same old Morgan. Can't leave well enough alone. You would do the same thing. I would. He met her eyes. But I wouldn't do it alone. Something passed between them, memories of shared darkness of a night in a valley where they'd both faced death and somehow survived. Rachel was the first to look away. You can't tell anyone, Marcus. If my cover is blown before I finish the investigation. Who? Cole's voice sharpened. Who's the target? Rachel hesitated. Then she walked to her desk and pulled a folder from beneath a stack of manifests. She handed it to Cole without a word. He opened it, read the first page. His expression darkened. Walsh, Staff Sergeant Derek Walsh. He's been skimming weapons from shipments for 18 months. Rifles, ammunition, explosives. All of it ending up with hostile contacts in Syria. I've been building a case, but he's careful. I need more evidence. And meanwhile, he treats you like garbage. Cole closed the folder. The incident in the mess hall. Word travels fast, even to temporary quarters. That's exactly what I need. If he sees me as weak as a target, he gets sloppy. Eventually, he'll make a mistake I can document. Cole was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. 3 years ago, you saved my life. You saved the lives of 27 of my men. You carried that burden alone then, too. He stepped closer. Not this time, Morgan. This time, you have backup. Rachel shook her head. If you help me, if the SEALs get involved, Walsh will know something's wrong. He'll destroy evidence, disappear. Then we don't help you. Cole's eyes gleamed. We watch, we wait, and when he makes his move, we're there to catch him. Rachel studied his face, searching for doubt, for hesitation. She found neither. Why, she asked quietly, after 3 years of believing I abandoned you, why would you help me? Cole's answer was simple, direct, the voice of a man who had seen too much death to waste words. Because the woman who crawled through a minefield to save my team doesn't get to suffer alone. Not anymore. He paused. And because that tattoo on your arm, it's not just ink. It's a promise. You saved us. Now it's our turn. For the first time in 3 years, Rachel felt something break inside her chest. Not pain, not fear. Something else. Hope. Damn. The next morning, Walsh made his move. Rachel arrived at the logistics desk to find chaos. 3 shipping containers had been mislabeled overnight. Critical supplies meant for the SEAL team communications equipment, specialized gear, had been marked for return shipment to Germany. By the time she caught the error, the containers were already on a truck headed for the airport. Problem, Morgan? Walsh materialized behind her, his squad flanking him, their expressions smug with satisfaction. Rachel's hands tightened on the manifest. She understood immediately. Sabotage. Someone had accessed the system overnight and altered the shipping codes. Someone who knew exactly how to make her look incompetent in front of the most elite operators on base. The SEALs are going to need that gear, Walsh continued, his voice dripping with false concern. What are you going to tell them? That you lost their equipment? Oh, that's going to go over real well. His men snickered. Rachel forced herself to breathe, to think. Cole's words echoed in her mind. We watch. We wait. And when he makes his move, we're there to catch him. This was the move. Walsh was pushing her, testing her, trying to destroy her credibility before she could expose him. He didn't know that she knew. He didn't know that every step he took was being documented. I'll handle it, Rachel said quietly. You'll handle it, Walsh laughed. Paper pusher, you can't handle a lunch tray. How are you going to fix this? Rachel turned to face him. Her expression was calm, but something in her eyes made Walsh's smile falter. I said I'll handle it, Sergeant. Is there something else you need? The moment stretched. Walsh's squad exchanged glances, sensing the shift in atmosphere without understanding it. Finally, Walsh stepped back. We'll see about that. He nodded to his men. Come on, let's let the clerk do her job. They left, their laughter echoing through the warehouse. Rachel stood alone, the mislabeled manifest crumpling in her grip. Her phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. Saw everything. We're tracking the truck. Equipment will be found at the airport before departure. Walsh doesn't know it yet, but he just handed us his first piece of evidence. Rachel smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. The game was just beginning. That night, Chen made a discovery. He hadn't meant to snoop. He was just walking past the motor pool, taking a shortcut to his quarters when he heard voices. Angry voices. Familiar voices. Walsh, Briggs, and someone else, someone whose accent didn't belong on a military base. Chen pressed himself against the wall, heart hammering, and listened. The last shipment. Where's my payment? The accented voice was cold, demanding. It's coming, Walsh replied. There's been complications. Some new personnel on base asking questions. I don't care about complications. I care about product. You promised rifles. I have buyers waiting, buyers who don't like waiting. Next week. I'll have a full load for you next week. A pause, then the accented voice again, lower now, dangerous. 1 week. If you disappoint me again, Staff Sergeant, our arrangement ends. Permanently, and you know what permanently means. Footsteps, a car engine, then silence. Chen didn't move for a long time. His legs felt like water. His brain refused to process what he'd just heard. Walsh was selling weapons, actual weapons, to actual enemies, and Chen was the only one who knew. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. He needed to tell someone. The MPs, the commander, anyone. But who would believe him? A private barely out of training accusing a decorated sergeant of treason. Walsh would destroy him, make him disappear. Unless... Chen thought about Rachel Morgan, the supply clerk who everyone dismissed, the woman who Walsh tormented daily, the woman whose eyes held secrets that didn't belong to a paper pusher. Maybe she would believe him. Maybe she already knew. Chen didn't sleep that night. He lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over in his mind. Walsh's voice, the accented stranger, the casual way they discussed weapons like other men discuss baseball. By morning, he had made his decision. He found Rachel in the logistics warehouse alone, as always, sorting through a mountain of paperwork. She looked up when he entered, and something in her expression told him she already knew why he was there. Private Chen, you look terrible. I need to talk to you, Sergeant. His voice cracked. It's important. Rachel set down her pen. She studied his face for a long moment, then stood and walked to the door. She checked the hallway, looked both ways, and closed it softly. Talk. Chen's words tumbled out in a rush. The motor pool, Walsh and Briggs, the man with the accent, the weapons, the threat. Everything he'd heard, everything he'd been too terrified to process until now. When he finished, Rachel was silent. Sergeant, Chen's hands were shaking. Did you hear what I said? Walsh is selling weapons to... I heard you. Then we need to report this. The MPs, the commander, someone... No. Chen stared at her. No. He's committing treason. People could die because of those weapons. Rachel walked back to her desk. She opened a drawer, pulled out a folder, and handed it to Chen without a word. He opened it. His eyes widened. Photographs, documents, shipping records with Walsh's signature, bank statements showing deposits that didn't match his salary, a timeline stretching back 18 months. You already knew, Chen whispered. I've been building this case since I arrived. Rachel's voice was flat, controlled. Walsh is careful. He covers his tracks. The evidence I have isn't enough for a conviction. Not yet. But what I heard last night is useful, but it's your word against his. A private with 3 weeks on base versus a decorated staff sergeant. Who do you think they'll believe? Chen felt the floor shift beneath him. She was right. He knew she was right, but the knowledge burned like acid in his stomach. So we just wait, let him keep selling weapons. We gather evidence. We document everything. And when we have enough to bury him, we strike. Rachel met his eyes. Can you do that? Private, can you watch him laugh and joke and torment people knowing what he is and keep your mouth shut? Chen thought about it, really thought about it. Yes, Sergeant, I can do that. Good. Rachel took the folder back and locked it in her desk. From now on, you report to me. Anything you see, anything you hear, you tell me first. Not the MPs, not your friends. Me. Understood. Understood. Rachel almost smiled. Almost. Welcome to the investigation, Private Chen. The next 3 days passed in a blur of tension and pretense. Chen went about his duties, keeping his head down, his ears open. Every time he saw Walsh, his skin crawled. Every laugh, every joke, every casual cruelty felt like a knife twisting in his gut. But he kept silent, just like Rachel asked. Meanwhile, the SEAL detachment settled into their temporary quarters. Commander Cole and his operators trained separately from the regular soldiers. Their exercises classified, their movements tracked by curious eyes. Rumors spread through the base like wildfire. Why were they really here? What mission were they preparing for? Only Rachel knew the truth, and she wasn't talking. On the fourth day, Walsh made another move. Rachel was in the motor pool checking inventory on a shipment of replacement parts when she heard the commotion. Raised voices, laughter, the unmistakable sound of someone being humiliated. She walked toward the noise and found Walsh standing over a young female private, her gear scattered across the concrete, her face red with shame. "Pick it up," Walsh ordered. "All of it. And maybe next time you'll learn to secure your equipment properly." The private scrambled to gather her things, hands trembling. The soldiers watching didn't help. They just stood there grinning, enjoying the show. Rachel felt something cold settle in her chest. "Private." Her voice cut through the laughter. "You're needed in the warehouse, go." The young woman looked up, startled, then grateful. She grabbed her gear and practically ran toward the warehouse, leaving Rachel alone with Walsh and his audience. Walsh's smile didn't fade. If anything, it grew wider. "Well, well, paper pusher to the rescue." He stepped closer, invading her space. "What's the matter, Morgan? Don't like seeing other people get treated the way you do. Leave us alone, Walsh, or what?" He spread his arms. "You're gonna file a complaint. Write a strongly worded memo. That's all you're good for, isn't it? Paperwork and whining." The soldiers around them shifted uncomfortably. Something in Rachel's expression had changed. Something dangerous. "I'm warning you once." Her voice was quiet, too quiet. "Leave the privates alone. Focus on soldiers your own rank." Walsh leaned in until his face was inches from hers. "And if I don't," Rachel didn't blink, "then you'll find out exactly what I'm good for." The moment stretched tight as a wire. Walsh's eyes searched her face, looking for fear, for weakness, for anything he could exploit. He found nothing. Finally, he stepped back with a harsh laugh. "Whatever you say, paper pusher. Whatever you say." He walked away, his squad following, their laughter echoing across the motor pool. But Rachel noticed something, a hesitation in Walsh's step, a glance back over his shoulder. For the first time, he wasn't entirely sure about her. Good. That night, Cole found her in the warehouse again. She was writing letters by lamplight, the same routine she'd followed for 3 years. When she heard his footsteps, she didn't look up. "You shouldn't be here, Commander. We need to talk. We talked 3 days ago. Nothing's changed." Cole pulled up a chair and sat across from her, uninvited. He looked at the letter in her hands, the careful handwriting, the envelope already addressed. "Who do you write to?" Rachel's pen stopped moving. "That's not your concern. Everything about you is my concern, Morgan. Has been since Afghanistan." She finally looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. "The families," she said quietly, "of the 3 who didn't make it." Cole felt his chest tighten. "You write to them?" "Every week, anonymous letters, just checking in, making sure they're okay." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They don't know who I am. They think their sons died heroes. They don't know that I'm the reason." "Stop." Cole's voice was sharp. "Don't do that." "Don't do what?" "Tell the truth. That's not the truth and you know it." He leaned forward. 3 men died that night. 27 lived. You want to know why? Because of you. Because you found a way out when there wasn't one. Because you carried wounded men on a shattered shoulder and kept fighting until we were clear. I should have found another way. I should have. There was no other way. Cole reached across the desk and grabbed her hand, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I was there, Morgan. I saw every option, every possibility. You saved everyone you could. The 3 who died, they died because of enemy fire, not because of you." Rachel's jaw trembled. She pulled her hand back, wrapping her arms around herself. "Then why does it still feel like my fault?" "Because you're human. Because you care." Cole's voice softened. "That's what makes you good at this. It's also what's destroying you." They sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, the desert wind howled against the warehouse walls, a lonely sound that matched the emptiness in Rachel's eyes. "Walsh is escalating," she said, finally changing the subject. "He tried to sabotage another shipment yesterday. I caught it in time, but he's getting desperate. We noticed. My men have been watching. And he's meeting with someone off base, a local contact. We tracked his movements 3 nights ago." Cole paused. The same night your private Chen overheard him in the motor pool. Rachel stiffened. You know about Chen. I know everything that happens on this base, Morgan, including the fact that you've recruited him as an asset. A ghost of a smile crossed Cole's face. Kid's got potential, scared out of his mind, but holding it together. He's brave, braver than he knows. Takes one to know one. Rachel shook her head but didn't argue. She was too tired to argue. What's your read on the timeline? Cole asked. How close is Walsh to making his next move? Close. His contact gave him a week. That was 4 days ago, which means he's got 3 days to deliver another shipment. Then we have 3 days to catch him in the act. Cole stood up. I told you, Morgan. You're not alone anymore. My team is ready. We're just waiting for your signal. He walked toward the door, then stopped. Turned back. Get some sleep. You look like death. Thanks for the compliment, Commander. Anytime. The door closed behind him. Rachel sat alone in the lamplight, the unfinished letter still in her hands. For a long time she didn't move. Then slowly she folded the letter, sealed it in the envelope, and added it to the stack she would never send. Some debts couldn't be paid with words. 2 days later, everything changed. It started with an inspection. Colonel Harrison, the base commander, announced a surprise review of all equipment and personnel. Every soldier at Camp Sentinel was ordered to formation for evaluation. Walsh saw his opportunity. Paper pusher, his voice rang across the motor pool where soldiers were scrambling to prepare. The colonel's going to inspect logistics first. You better have your paperwork in order. Rachel didn't respond. She was already walking toward the inspection area, clipboard in hand, uniform immaculate. Walsh fell into step beside her. You know what happens if you screw this up, right in front of the SEALs, in front of everyone. I'm aware, Sergeant. Good, because I'd hate to see you embarrass yourself, he grinned. Again. The formation assembled in the main yard. Hundreds of soldiers standing at attention, the desert sun beating down on their shoulders. Colonel Harrison walked the lines with his aides, stopping occasionally to inspect equipment, ask questions, test readiness. The SEALs stood apart watching. Commander Cole's expression was unreadable. Harrison reached the logistics section. His eyes found Rachel immediately. Sergeant Morgan, step forward. Rachel obeyed, boots clicking on the concrete. Harrison picked up an M4 carbine from a nearby rack. He held it out like a challenge. Your specialty is paperwork, correct? Supply chains manifest that sort of thing. Yes, sir. Then explain to me why a logistics sergeant needs to know anything about weapons maintenance. Walsh snickered from somewhere behind her. A ripple of amusement passed through the watching soldiers. Rachel's expression didn't change. With respect, sir, effective logistics requires comprehensive knowledge of the equipment we track, including weapons. Is that so? Harrison's eyes narrowed. Prove it. Disassemble this weapon. The snickering stopped. This wasn't a fair test. Everyone knew Rachel wasn't combat arms. Everyone expected her to fail. Rachel accepted the rifle. She looked at it for exactly 1 second. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a cloth strip. She tied it around her eyes. Gasps rippled through the formation. Walsh's smile froze on his face. In the darkness, Rachel's fingers moved with mechanical precision. Bolt, firing pin, extractor, handguard, buffer spring. Piece by piece, she laid the weapon out on the table in front of her, each component placed in perfect order. The clicking of metal against metal was the only sound in the yard. 47 seconds. The M4 lay stripped bare. Rachel removed the blindfold and began reassembling. Her movements were even faster now, muscle memory taking over hands, doing what hands had done 1,000 times before. The final click of the magazine echoed like thunder. She slid the rifle across the table. Will there be anything else, sir? Colonel Harrison stared at her. His expression had shifted from skepticism to something else entirely. Something like recognition. Where did you learn that, Sergeant? Rachel's answer was simple. The manual, sir. But everyone watching knew better. No manual taught that. No training exercise produced that kind of speed, that precision, that absolute confidence. From the edge of the formation, Commander Cole allowed himself a small smile. The woman they dismissed as a clerk had just demonstrated skills that most operators spent years perfecting. Walsh's face was white, his hands clenched at his sides. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. After the inspection, Walsh cornered Rachel behind the motor pool. His squad blocked every exit. What the hell was that? Rachel looked at him with something approaching pity. What, Sergeant? You know what I'm talking about. He stepped closer, finger jabbing toward her chest. That little show you put on, the blindfold, the speed. Where did you learn that? I told the colonel, the manual. Bull. Walsh grabbed her arm, squeezing hard. Nobody learns that from a manual. I've been in the Army 15 years, and I've never seen anyone strip a weapon that fast. Not combat soldiers, not even the SEALs. Rachel looked down at his hand on her arm, then up at his face. Let go, Sergeant. Not until you tell me what you are. I'm a logistics clerk. Lie. I'm a paper pusher. Lie. Walsh's grip tightened. Who are you, Morgan? Who do you really work for? Rachel's eyes went cold. That same cold Chen had seen in the warehouse. That same cold that made Walsh hesitate in the motor pool days ago. I work for the United States Army, Sergeant. Same as you. She paused. Although I suspect our definitions of service are very different. Walsh's face flushed. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know exactly what you are. Rachel's voice dropped to a whisper. And when the time comes, so will everyone else. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Walsh's squad watched confused, sensing the shift in power without understanding it. Finally, Walsh released her arm. He stepped back, but his eyes never left her face. You're going to regret this, Morgan. Whatever game you're playing, you're going to regret it. We'll see. She walked away without looking back. That night, Walsh made a phone call. We have a problem. The accented voice on the other end sounded annoyed. I don't like problems. There's a woman on base, a clerk, but she's not a clerk. She knows something, maybe everything. A pause, then deal with her. It's not that simple. She's got protection. The SEALs have been watching her, and after today, the colonel is probably asking questions too. Another pause, longer this time. When the voice spoke again, it was colder than before. The shipment happens tomorrow night. Nothing changes. If this woman is a threat, eliminate her. If you can't eliminate her, discredit her. Make them think she's unstable, unreliable, dangerous. I don't care how you do it. Just make sure nothing interferes with my delivery. The line went dead. Walsh stared at the phone in his hand. His mind raced through possibilities, scenarios, ways to destroy Rachel Morgan before she destroyed him. And then he smiled. He knew exactly what to do. The next morning, Rachel woke to chaos. Sirens wailed across the base. Soldiers ran through the corridors shouting orders, grabbing weapons. Something was very wrong. She threw on her uniform and stepped outside just as Chen came running toward her. Sergeant, there's been an incident. What kind of incident? The armory. Someone broke in last night. Weapons are missing. Rachel's blood ran cold. How many? Dozen rifles, maybe more. They're still counting. Chen's face was pale. And Sergeant, they're saying you did it. What? Walsh, he's telling everyone you had access to the armory last night, that you were seen leaving the area at 300. The MPs are looking for you. Rachel stood frozen, processing the information. Walsh had made his move, not just against the weapons shipment, but against her directly. Framed the investigator for the crime she was investigating. It was brilliant. It was exactly what she would have done in his position. And it was about to destroy everything. Chen listened to me carefully. Rachel grabbed his shoulders. You need to find Commander Cole. Tell him what's happening. Tell him it's time. Time for what? He'll know. She pushed Chen toward the SEAL quarters. Go, now. Chen ran. Rachel turned and walked directly toward the MP station, hands raised, making herself visible. If she ran, she looked guilty. If she hid, she looked guilty. The only chance she had was to face this head on. The MPs saw her coming. 3 of them, weapons drawn, faces hard. Sergeant Morgan, you're under suspicion for theft of military equipment. You need to come with us. I understand. Rachel kept her hands up. I'm cooperating fully. They led her toward the holding facility, past crowds of soldiers who had gathered to watch. Walsh stood among them, his expression carefully neutral, but Rachel could see the triumph in his eyes. He thought he had won. He had no idea what was coming. In the holding room, they left her alone with her thoughts. No lawyer, no advocate, just 4 walls and the certainty that her investigation was about to collapse. The door opened. Colonel Harrison stepped inside, followed by a man in civilian clothes Rachel didn't recognize. "Sergeant Morgan," Harrison's voice was cold. "Do you know why you're here?" "I've been informed, sir." "Then you know how serious this is. Weapons theft on a forward's operating base. During wartime. That's a court-martial offense. That's Leavenworth." Rachel said nothing. The civilian stepped forward. "My name is Agent Cross, Defense Intelligence Agency. I have some questions about your activities over the past 18 months. Rachel met his eyes. "I'll answer whatever you want." "Good." Cross pulled out a folder. "Let's start with why a logistics clerk has been sending encrypted communications to a JSOC handler twice a week for the past year." Harrison's head snapped toward Cross. "What?" Cross ignored him. His attention was fixed on Rachel. "You're not really a clerk, are you, Sergeant Morgan? Or should I call you by your operational call sign?" He opened the folder. "Phantom Orchid." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Harrison stared at Rachel like he was seeing her for the first time. "Phantom, that's a classified designation. Special Operations Intelligence. How does a supply sergeant..." "Because she's not a supply sergeant." Cross closed the folder. "She's an embedded intelligence officer running a counterintelligence operation on your base, Colonel. And the man who accused her of theft is the subject of her investigation." Harrison's face went through several colors. "Walsh, Staff Sergeant Walsh." "The same. He's been running weapons to hostile contacts for 18 months. Sergeant Morgan has been building a case against him. And last night he tried to eliminate her by framing her for his own crimes." The room was silent. Rachel finally spoke. "Sir, with respect, we don't have much time. Walsh is planning to move another shipment tonight. If we don't act now, we lose everything." Harrison looked at Cross. Cross looked at Rachel. "What do you need, Sergeant?" Rachel stood up. Her hands were steady. Her voice was steel. "I need the SEALs, and I need Walsh to think he's won." The plan was simple, dangerous but simple. Rachel would remain in custody. Officially, she was still under investigation for weapons theft. Unofficially, she was the bait in a trap that would close around Walsh like a steel vise. Colonel Harrison left the holding room with a new understanding of the woman he'd dismissed as a clerk. Agent Cross followed, already coordinating with JSOC handlers. Only Commander Cole remained standing in the doorway watching Rachel with eyes that held too many memories. "You could have told Harrison the truth months ago," Cole said quietly. "Ended this before Walsh ever had a chance to frame you, and lose 18 months of evidence." Rachel shook her head. "Walsh isn't just a weapons dealer, Marcus. He's a node in a network. If I'd moved too soon, the people above him would have disappeared. We'd have caught one criminal and lost a dozen. So you let him humiliate you, mock you, make your life hell. That's the job." Cole stepped closer. "The job doesn't require you to suffer alone." "Yes, it does." Rachel's voice was flat. "That's what makes it work. If I had friends, if I had support, Walsh would have suspected something. The loneliness was part of the cover. And now the cover is blown." She almost smiled. "So I might as well have backup." Cole's expression softened. "My team is ready. We've been tracking Walsh's contact for 3 days. We know the rendezvous point, the timing, everything. When he makes his move tonight, we'll be there." "What about Chen Bond?" "The kid. He's solid. Nervous as hell, but solid. I've got him positioned in communications. If anything goes wrong, he'll relay the message." Rachel nodded slowly. "Good. He deserves better than getting caught in the crossfire." "So do you." The words hung in the air between them. Rachel looked away, uncomfortable with the concern in Cole's voice. "I should get back to pretending I'm a prisoner." "Morgan." Cole's hand caught her arm. "When this is over, we need to talk. About Afghanistan, about the 3 years you spent hiding, about everything. When this is over, Commander, I'll probably be reassigned to another hole in another desert." She pulled her arm free gently. "That's how this works. You know that." "Maybe, maybe not." Cole stepped back. "But whatever happens, you're not disappearing again. Not without a fight." He left before she could respond. Rachel sat alone in the holding room, surrounded by concrete walls and silence. For the first time in 3 years, she wasn't sure if the silence was protection or prison. Word of Rachel's arrest spread through Camp Sentinel like wildfire. By noon, every soldier on base had heard some version of the story. The quiet clerk had snapped. The paper pusher had turned traitor. The woman with the butterfly tattoo was a thief, a spite criminal. Walsh made sure the rumors grew. I always knew something was off about her. He told his squad in the mess hall loud enough for everyone to hear. The way she watched people, the way she asked questions. She was gathering intel, boys, probably selling it to the same people she was stealing weapons for. Briggs nodded along. You think she was working with someone on base? Had to be. No way she pulled this off alone. Walsh leaned back, enjoying the attention. But don't worry, the MPs will get it out of her. And when they do, heads are going to roll. From across the mess hall, Chen watched the performance with barely contained rage. His hands shook as he lifted his coffee cup. He wanted to stand up to scream the truth to expose Walsh for the snake he was. But Rachel's voice echoed in his mind. We gather evidence. We document everything. And when we have enough to bury him, we strike. Tonight. They would strike tonight. Chen forced himself to look away to focus on his meal to breathe. He had a role to play. He couldn't afford to blow it now. The afternoon dragged on. Rachel remained in custody, answering questions from investigators who didn't know she was running the operation. She played her part perfectly. Confused, frightened, insisting on her innocence while carefully avoiding any mention of Walsh's real activities. Meanwhile, Cole's team prepared. They gathered in a secure room at the edge of the base, 7 operators, plus their commander, reviewing maps and timelines. The rendezvous point was a warehouse complex 3 miles outside the perimeter. Walsh had used it twice before, always at night, always with minimal security. He thinks he's safe, Cole said, pointing to the map. His contact arrives at 2300. Exchange happens inside the main building. Our job is to let the deal go down, document everything, then close the trap. Rules of engagement, one operator asked. Capture if possible. Lethal force only if necessary. Cole paused. But Walsh's contact has bodyguards. Former military, probably mercenaries. They won't surrender quietly. The operators exchanged glances. They'd faced worse odds in darker places. What about Morgan? Another asked. Is she part of the takedown? Cole hesitated. She stays in custody until we confirm the exchange. Once Walsh is in cuffs, we bring her in for the debrief. With respect, sir, that doesn't seem fair. She's been running this op for 18 months. She should be there when it ends. I agree. Cole's voice was tight, but Cross and Harrison want her protected. If something goes wrong, they don't want their star witness caught in a firefight. The room fell silent. Every man there knew what it felt like to be sidelined when the mission went hot. They understood Rachel's frustration even without seeing it. All right, Cole said finally. We move at 2200. Radio silence until contact. Any questions? None. Then get some rest. Tonight we finish this. At 2100, Walsh left the base. He drove alone, headlights cutting through the desert darkness, confidence radiating from every movement. The frame job had worked perfectly. Morgan was locked up, discredited, finished. By morning, he would complete the weapons deal, pocket another payment, and watch the woman who had threatened him disappear into military prison. Life was good. He reached the warehouse complex at 22:30, 30 minutes early. His contact liked punctuality. It was one of the few things they agreed on. The building was dark, abandoned, perfect for business that couldn't stand daylight. Walsh parked near the entrance and waited engine, running eyes scanning the shadows. At exactly 2300, a convoy of black SUVs appeared on the horizon. Walsh stepped out of his vehicle. He straightened his uniform, checked his sidearm, and walked toward the main building. This was the part he loved, the power, the control, the knowledge that he was smarter than everyone who tried to stop him. The SUV stopped. Doors opened. Armed men emerged, forming a protective ring around a tall figure in civilian clothes. Staff Sergeant Walsh. The accented voice was familiar. Cold. You have something for me. Inside. Walsh gestured toward the warehouse. Everything you requested. Rifles, ammunition, explosives. Top quality straight from Uncle Sam. The contact smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Show me. They walked into the warehouse together, bodyguards following at a careful distance. Walsh led them to a stack of crates in the center of the floor, each one marked with false shipping labels. Open one, the contact ordered. Walsh pulled a crowbar from nearby and pried open the nearest crate. Inside, nestled in packing material, lay a row of M4 carbines. Brand new, untraceable. The contact's smile widened. Excellent. The payment is in the vehicles. We can conclude our business quickly. Not so fast. Walsh held up a hand. There's been complications. A woman on base was investigating me. She's dealt with now, but I need assurances. If anything connects back to me, nothing will connect back to you, Staff Sergeant. That is why you deal with us. The contact's eyes glittered. But I appreciate your caution. It shows intelligence. Just covering my bases. As you should. The contact turned to his bodyguards. Bring the payment. One of the men jogged back toward the SUVs. Walsh relaxed slightly, already calculating how he would spend the money. Maybe a vacation after this deployment. Somewhere warm. Somewhere far from deserts and warehouses and women with black orchid tattoos. The bodyguard returned carrying a metal briefcase. He set it on a crate and opened it, revealing stacks of $100 bills. 200,000, the contact said. As agreed, Walsh reached for the briefcase, and that was when the lights came on. Blinding white flooded the warehouse. Walsh threw up an arm, stumbling backward, his other hand reaching for his weapon. Federal agents, nobody move. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Walsh spun, searching for the source, and found himself staring at a wall of operators in full tactical gear. SEALs, a dozen of them, weapons raised, faces invisible behind masks. The contact's bodyguards went for their guns. The first burst of fire dropped two of them before they could aim. The others dove for cover, returning fire blindly filling the warehouse with the thunder of automatic weapons. Walsh hit the ground, crawling toward the exit. Survival and instinct overriding everything else. He had to get out. Had to disappear. A boot came down on his back, pinning him to the concrete. Staff Sergeant Derek Walsh. Commander Cole's voice was ice. You are under arrest for weapons trafficking, your conspiracy, and treason against the United States of America. This is a mistake, Walsh twisted, trying to see his captor. I was working undercover testing security. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Cole pressed harder. I also understand that you've spent the last 3 months tormenting one of the finest intelligence officers I've ever known, and that stops tonight. Walsh's face went white. Morgan, this was Morgan's operation. Give the man a prize. Gunfire still echoed through the warehouse. The contact's bodyguards were falling one by one, outmatched by operators who had trained for exactly this kind of fight. Within minutes, it was over. The contact himself lay face down on the concrete, hands zip-tied behind his back. His cold smile replaced by something closer to shock. Cole hauled Walsh to his feet. Get him out of here, and make sure the whole base sees him in cuffs. 2 operators dragged Walsh toward the exit. He was still protesting, still claiming innocence, still trying to talk his way out of the trap that had closed around him. It didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming. The witnesses were federal agents, and the woman he had tried to destroy was about to become the hero of the entire operation. Back at Camp Sentinel, Rachel waited. She sat in the holding room, hands folded, eyes fixed on the door. She had heard the gunfire through the radio Chen had smuggled to her. She knew the operation had gone hot. She knew people might be dying, and she couldn't do anything but wait. The minutes stretched like hours. Every second felt like a lifetime. Rachel's nails dug into her palms, leaving crescents of pain that helped her focus, helped her stay present. Then the door opened. Colonel Harrison stepped inside, his expression unreadable. Behind him, Agent Cross, and behind them a face Rachel hadn't expected to see. Commander Cole, still in tactical gear, still breathing hard from the operation. It's done, Cole said simply. Walsh is in custody. His contact is singing like a bird. We've got everything. Rachel closed her eyes. 3 years of work, 18 months of humiliation, countless nights of silence and solitude, and letters that would never be sent. It was finally over. Sergeant Morgan, Harrison's voice pulled her back. On behalf of the United States Army, I owe you an apology. I had no idea what you were doing here. No idea who you really were. That was the point, sir. I understand that now. Harrison stepped closer. Agent Cross has briefed me on your background. Operation Silent Thunder. The men you saved. The years you spent in the shadows. He paused. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me, Colonel. Just make sure Walsh pays for what he did. He will. Cross spoke for the first time. His contact has already identified 3 other nodes in the network. We're rolling them up as we speak. By morning, the entire operation will be dismantled. Mantled. Rachel nodded slowly. She should have felt triumph, victory, something. Instead, she felt empty. Cole noticed. He always noticed. Give us a minute, he said to Harrison and Cross. It wasn't a request. They left without argument. The door closed behind them. Morgan? Cole knelt in front of her, bringing himself to eye level. Look at me. She did. Her eyes were dry, but something behind them was breaking. You did it, Cole said softly. You stopped him. You saved Liz. You finished the mission. I know. Then why do you look like you lost? Rachel was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because I've spent 3 years building walls, pushing people away, convincing myself that I was better off alone. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. And now the mission is over, and I don't know who I am without it. Cole reached out and took her hands. His grip was warm, solid, real. You're Rachel Morgan. You're the woman who crawled through a minefield to save my team. You're the woman who carried wounded men on a shattered shoulder. You're the woman who spent 3 years writing letters to families she couldn't face. He squeezed her hands. You're not alone anymore, and you never have to be again. Rachel's composure cracked. Just a little. Just enough for a single tear to escape down her cheek. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. How to be normal. Neither do I. Cole smiled slightly, but we can figure it out together if you want. For a long time, Rachel didn't answer. She just sat there holding onto Cole's hands like they were the only thing keeping her grounded. Then slowly she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Together. The next morning, Walsh was transported to a federal facility for processing. His trial would come later, along with headlines and scandals and the kind of attention that ruined careers and destroyed families. But for now, he was just another prisoner in an orange jumpsuit, stripped of rank and dignity, and everything he had built on lies. Rachel watched the convoy leave from the edge of the base. Chen stood beside her, silent, uncertain what to say. You did good. Private, Rachel said finally. Without you, we might not have caught him in time. I didn't do anything. You're the one who, you listened when no one else would. You trusted me when everyone else thought I was crazy. She turned to face him. That takes courage. Real courage. Chen's face reddened. Thank you, Sergeant. Rachel. She almost smiled. After everything, I think you've earned the right to call me Rachel. Chen nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. They stood together in silence, watching the dust settle where the convoy had been. The sun was rising over Camp Sentinel, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber. A new day, a new beginning, and somewhere in the distance, a helicopter approached. Rachel shaded her eyes, watching it grow larger. Military transport, the kind used for high-value personnel. Are you expecting visitors? Chen asked. No. The helicopter landed in the main yard, rotors kicking up clouds of dust. The door slid open and a figure emerged that made Rachel's heart stop. General Thompson, 3 stars, commander of Joint Special Operations. She hadn't seen him since Afghanistan. Since the night everything changed. Thompson walked toward her with purpose, his aide struggling to keep up. When he reached her, he stopped. His eyes swept her face, her uniform, the tattoo visible on her forearm. Sergeant Morgan, his voice carried the weight of command. I've been looking for you for 3 years. Rachel's throat tightened. General, you were supposed to be dead. That was the official story, the cover we agreed on. Thompson's expression softened slightly. But dead women don't run counterintelligence operations that dismantle international weapons networks. Sir, I can explain. I don't need explanations. Thompson reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. I need to give you something that's been waiting far too long. He opened the box. Inside, resting on velvet, lay a bronze star with valor. Rachel stared at it. Her hands trembled. This was supposed to be awarded 3 years ago, Thompson said, for Operation Silent Thunder, for saving the lives of 27 special operators, for actions above and beyond the call of duty. He paused. But you disappeared before we could present it. I wasn't ready, sir. Are you ready now? Rachel looked at the medal, at the general, at Chen standing awkwardly nearby, at Cole, who had appeared from somewhere watching with an expression she couldn't read. She thought about the 3 men who had died in that valley, about the letters she had written, about the years she had spent hiding from an honor she didn't feel she deserved. No, she said finally, I'm not ready. Thompson's eyebrows rose, but I'll take it anyway. Rachel reached out and accepted the box, because they would have wanted me to, the ones who didn't come home. Thompson nodded slowly. That's exactly what they would have wanted, Sergeant. He saluted her, crisp, sharp, perfect, and this time Rachel saluted back. But the general wasn't finished. There's one more thing, he said, lowering his hand. The network Walsh was connected to goes deeper than we thought. International. Government-level contacts. People who won't stop just because we caught one dealer. Rachel's eyes narrowed. What are you saying, sir? I'm saying we need someone to finish what you started. Someone with your skills, your connections, your ability to disappear. Thompson paused. I'm offering you a choice, Morgan. You can take your medal, accept an honorable discharge, and walk away. Or you can come back. Not as a clerk, not as a ghost, as what you really are. The words hung in the air. Rachel looked at Cole. He gave her nothing. No pressure, no expectation, just support whatever she decided. She looked at Chen, the young private who had risked everything to do the right thing. She looked at her arm, at the black orchid that had marked her as different, as dangerous, as something more than she had ever wanted to be. Then she looked at Thompson. When do I start? Thompson's answer was immediate. Now. Rachel didn't flinch. She had expected nothing less. The weapons Walsh sold didn't just disappear into a black market. Thompson continued, lowering his voice. Our intelligence tracked them to a cell operating along the Syrian border. 15 American-made rifles, enough ammunition to level a village, and enough explosives to take out a convoy. What kind of cell? The kind that's planning something big. Something soon. Thompson's jaw tightened. We intercepted communications 3 hours ago. They're targeting a humanitarian convoy crossing into Syria tomorrow morning. Doctors, nurses, aid workers. 63 civilians. Rachel's blood went cold. Walsh's weapons. The same ones he handed over 2 nights ago. The same ones that are now pointed at innocent people. Thompson met her eyes. We need someone who knows this network inside and out. Someone who can coordinate the strike and ensure those weapons never fire a single shot. You have SEALs. You have Delta. Why me? Because you've been living inside this operation for 18 months. You know Walsh's contacts, his methods, his patterns. You know things that aren't in any file. Thompson paused. And because Commander Cole specifically requested you, Rachel's head turned. Cole stood 15 feet away, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He did what? He told me that if we're going into that valley, he wants you running comms. Thompson almost smiled, said something about trusting your math with his life. The words hit Rachel like a physical blow, the same words she had spoken 3 years ago, the same promise that had saved 27 men in a different valley, a different lifetime. Sir. Rachel's voice was steady, but something underneath it trembled. I'm not cleared for active operations anymore. My cover was logistics. My training is 3 years out of date. Your training is exactly what we need. Thompson handed her a folder. Everything's inside. Target coordinates, team, assignments, timeline. We brief in 1 hour. Rachel took the folder. It felt heavier than paper should. One more thing. Thompson's voice softened. The men who are going into that valley, they know who you are now. They know what you did in Afghanistan. They know about Operation Silent Thunder. He paused. They're not following orders anymore, Morgan. They're following you. He walked away before she could respond. Rachel stood frozen, a folder clutched in her hands, staring at nothing. Chen appeared beside her, uncertain, hovering. Sergeant Rachel, are you okay? No. She laughed, but it sounded wrong. I'm about to coordinate a military strike against a terrorist cell using weapons that I spent 18 months trying to stop. And if anything goes wrong, 63 innocent people die. But you've done this before. Afghanistan, you saved. I also got 3 men killed. Rachel's voice cracked. That's the part no one talks about, Chen. The 3 who didn't come home. The ones I see every time I close my eyes. Chen was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was firm. Then make sure no one else joins them. Rachel looked at him, really looked at him. This young private who had stumbled into her investigation by accident, who had risked everything to do the right thing, who was standing here now offering courage she didn't feel. You're wiser than you look, Private. I learned from the best. Rachel almost smiled, almost. Then she opened the folder and began to read. The briefing happened in a secure room beneath the base command center. 12 operators plus Cole plus Rachel. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. Rachel stood at the front maps projected on the wall behind her, speaking in a voice that carried authority she didn't entirely feel. The target is a compound 17 miles across the Syrian border. Satellite imagery shows 3 buildings, 1 main structure, 2 outbuildings. The weapons are stored in the eastern outbuilding. The cell has approximately 20 fighters armed with small arms and the American rifles Walsh provided. She changed the image. A convoy road appeared. The humanitarian convoy will cross the border at 0600 tomorrow. Their route takes them within 2 miles of the compound. Intel suggests the cell plans to ambush them here. She pointed. A narrow pass with limited visibility. Perfect kill zone. Rules of engagement, one operator asked. Eliminate the threat, recover the weapons, 0 civilian casualties. Rachel paused. But our primary objective is the convoy. If we can't neutralize the cell in time, we redirect the convoy and abort the strike. Cole spoke up. What's our window? Narrow, very narrow. Rachel turned to face the team. We inserted 0300. That gives us 3 hours to reach the compound, assess the situation, and eliminate hostiles before the convoy enters the danger zone. And if they're waiting for us, then we improvise. Rachel's voice hardened. But we do not let those weapons fire on civilians, whatever it takes. The room fell silent. Every man there understood the weight of what she was asking. The risk, the stakes, questions, none. Then gear up, we move in 4 hours. The operators filed out, each one pausing briefly to acknowledge Rachel. A nod, a word of respect. Something she had never received at Camp Sentinel before. Cole was the last to leave. He stopped at the door. You ready for this? Does it matter? It matters to me. Rachel met his eyes. 3 years ago, you asked me to trust my math. You trusted me when you had no reason to. And now I'm asking you to do it again. Her voice wavered slightly, but this time I'm terrified. Cole walked toward her. He stood close enough that she could see the lines around his eyes, the gray at his temples, the weight of decades in uniform. Good, he said, quietly. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you honest. The day you stop being afraid is the day you get people killed. What if I get them killed anyway? Then we carry it together, and he put his hand on her shoulder. Just like Afghanistan, just like always. Rachel felt something loosen in her chest, not the fear. The fear was still there, coiled and waiting. But something else, something that felt almost like hope. Thank you, Marcus. Thank me when we get back. He squeezed her shoulder and walked away. With a drink. The next 4 hours passed in a blur of preparation and adrenaline. Rachel worked through equipment checks, communication protocols, contingency plans. Every detail mattered. Every variable could mean the difference between success and catastrophe. Chen found her in the communications bay testing frequencies. I want to help, he said without preamble. You're not cleared for this operation. I know, but I can monitor from here. Relay messages. Watch the feeds. He straightened. I'm not asking to fight, Rachel. I'm asking to support. Rachel studied him. The nervousness was still there, but underneath it, something harder. Something that had grown over the past weeks. Colonel Harrison approved you for comm support. I didn't ask, Colonel Harrison. Chen, you said I was brave. You said I risked everything to do the right thing. His jaw set. This is me doing it again. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Fine, but you follow protocols. You do exactly what you are told. And if things go wrong, you do not try to be a hero. Understood. Good. She handed him a headset. welcome to the team. At 0230, the helicopters lifted off from Camp Sentinel. Rachel sat in the communications base surrounded by screens and radios, watching the feeds as the team flew towards Syria. Her hands were steady on the controls, but her heart pounded against her ribs. 17 miles, 20 hostile fighters, 63 civilian lives. The math was simple. The execution would be anything but. Phantom Orchid, this is Alpha 1. Cole's voice crackled through the headset. We are 15 minutes from insertion point, requesting final confirmation. Rachel took a breath. Alpha 1, this is Phantom Orchid. You are cleared for insertion. Satellite shows minimal movement at target location. Weather is clear. You have green light. Copy that. Alpha 1 out. The screens showed the helicopters descending toward a ridge 3 miles from the compound. 12 men dropping into darkness, weapons ready, trusting the voice in their ears to guide them home. Rachel's voice. Chen? She didn't look away from the screens. Start the clock. Timer started. 0300 hours. 3 hours to convoy crossing. 3 hours, 180 minutes to save 63 lives. Rachel leaned forward, every nerve in her body focused on the mission. The first hour passed in controlled silence. The team moved through the terrain like ghosts using night vision and decades of training to navigate obstacles that would have stopped lesser soldiers. Rachel tracked their progress through GPS markers, calling out adjustments, warning of movement, guiding them around potential threats. Alpha 1, you have 2 heat signatures 100 meters east. Possible patrol. Copy. Going dark. The markers stopped moving. Rachel held her breath. 30 seconds. A minute. 2. Phantom Orchid, this is Alpha 1. Patrol neutralized. Continuing to objective. Rachel exhaled. Copy Alpha 1. Good work. Behind her, Chen watched the screens with wide eyes. He had never seen an operation like this. The precision, the communication. The way Rachel orchestrated every movement like a conductor leading an orchestra. How do you stay so calm? He asked during a brief lull. I'm not calm. Rachel's eyes never left the screens. I'm terrified. But terror doesn't help them. Focus does. Chen struggled for words. That's incredible. That's survival. Rachel adjusted a frequency. Now stay quiet. We're approaching the compound. The second hour brought the first complication. Phantom Orchid, this is Alpha 1. We have visual on target, but we've got a problem. Rachel's stomach dropped. Report. Oh. The intel was wrong. We're not looking at 20 fighters. We're looking at 30 plus with heavy weapons. They've got a technical with a mounted 50 cal in what looks like RPG positions on the rooftops. The room went cold. 30 fighters, heavy weapons, against 12 operators. Can you complete the objective? A pause. When Cole spoke again, his voice was tight. We can try, but our odds just got a lot worse. Rachel's mind raced through possibilities. Abort the mission and the convoy dies. Continue and her team might not survive. Neither option was acceptable. Alpha 1, hold position. I'm reworking the approach. Phantom Orchid, we don't have time for. I said hold position, Commander. Rachel's voice was steel. Trust me. Silence on the line. Then copy. Holding position. Rachel pulled up satellite imagery cross-referencing with the team's position. Her fingers flew across the keyboard and calculating angles, distances, vulnerabilities. Chen, get me General Thompson on secure channel. What? Why? Just do it. 30 seconds later, Thompson's voice filled her headset. Morgan, what's happening? Sir, we have a situation. Target is heavily fortified, more fighters than expected. I need air support. Air support wasn't approved for this operation. The diplomatic... I don't care about diplomatic considerations, General. I have 12 men about to walk into a death trap and 63 civilians who will die if we don't neutralize this compound. I need air support, and I need it now. Thompson was silent for a long moment. What exactly do you need? 1 drone strike, targeted on the technical and RPG positions. It eliminates their heavy weapons, evens the odds, and gives my team a chance. That's Aryan airspace, Morgan. If we're detected, we won't be detected. I've plotted a flight path that avoids their radar. The strike happens, my team moves in, and we're out before anyone knows we were there. Rachel's voice hardened. General, I am not losing anyone tonight. Not one operator, not one civilian. I need that drone. Another pause. Longer this time. You have it. Thompson's voice was resigned. Drone will be in position in 15 minutes. Make it count, Morgan. Yes, sir. The line went dead. Rachel turned to Chen. Get me Cole. Alpha 1, this is Phantom Orchid. Situation update. Go ahead. Air support incoming. Drone strike on heavy weapons positions in approximately 14 minutes. When those positions go down, you move. Hard and fast. Clear. Cole's voice carried something that might have been relief. Clear. We'll be ready. Good. Rachel allowed herself one small breath. And Marcus, bring them all home. That's the plan. The 14 minutes felt like 14 hours. Rachel watched the screens tracking the drone's approach, counting down the seconds. Her hands were shaking now. She couldn't stop them. Chen sat beside her, silent, pale, understanding for the first time what it really meant to hold lives in your hands. 30 seconds to target, Rachel announced. Copy, Phantom Orchid. We are in position. 20 seconds. On the screen, the drone's camera showed the compound. The technical, the fighters, the weapons that had once belonged to the United States Army. 10 seconds. Rachel's finger hovered over the confirmation button. 5, then 4, 3, 2, 1. She pressed the button. The screen flashed white as the missile hit its target. The technical disappeared in a ball of flame. Secondary explosions rippled through the compound as ammunition cooked off. Strike confirmed. Alpha 1, you are clear to engage. Moving now, Sick. The next 8 minutes were chaos. Gunfire erupted across the compound. Rachel tracked every marker, every voice, every burst of static. She called out positions, warned of flankers, coordinated movements with a precision born of desperation. Alpha 3, you've got 2 hostiles approaching your 6. Copy, engaging. Alpha 7, hold position. Alpha 2 needs cover fire on the eastern building. Moving. Alpha 1 target building is clear. The weapons are inside. Copy. Securing now. Bodies fell. Bullets flew. Men lived and died in the span of seconds. And through it all, Rachel's voice never wavered. She was the calm in the storm, the guide in the darkness, the thread that held everything together. Phantom Orchid, this is Alpha 1. Cole's voice was ragged, breathless. Target secured. All hostiles neutralized. Weapons recovered. Rachel closed her eyes. Casualties. 2 wounded, none critical. A pause. We made it, Morgan. All of us. The relief hit her like a wave. Her hands finally stopped shaking. Copy, Alpha 1. Extraction en route. Get your people out of there. Already moving. Rachel leaned back in her chair, exhaustion washing over her. Beside her, Chen was crying. She didn't blame him. Is it always like that? He asked. Sometimes it's worse. Rachel wiped her face with the back of her hand. Tonight was a good night. A good night. Everyone came home. She stood up, legs unsteady. That's all we can ask for, Chen. That everyone comes home. The helicopters returned at dawn. Rachel stood on the tarmac watching them descend, counting the figures that emerged. 12, all 12. Cole was the last off. He walked toward her with purpose, still covered in dust and sweat and the residue of combat. When he reached her, he stopped. You did it. We did it. No. Cole shook his head. That drone strike, the coordination, the way you held everything together, that was you. All you. Rachel didn't know what to so she said nothing. Cole reached out and took her hand. 3 years ago, you saved my life in a valley in Afghanistan. Tonight, you did it again. He paused. How many times are you going to rescue me before I get to return the favor? I wasn't keeping count. I was. He squeezed her hand. And I always pay my debts. Behind them, the other operators gathered, men who had followed Rachel's voice through darkness, who had trusted her calculations with their lives, who had come home because of her. One by one, they approached. One by one, they offered their thanks. A handshake, a nod, a word of respect. These were warriors who had seen the worst humanity had to offer. They didn't give praise lightly, but they gave it to her. And Rachel, for the first time in 3 years, allowed herself to accept it. Colonel Harrison arrived as the last operator walked away. Sergeant Morgan, his voice carried a respect that hadn't been there before. General Thompson is requesting a full debrief, and he wants you there personally. Now, the convoy crossed safely 30 minutes ago. 63 aid workers are alive because of what happened tonight. Harrison paused. The general wants to thank you himself. Rachel nodded slowly. I'll be there. But before she could move, something caught her eye. A formation was gathering in the main yard. Soldiers in dress uniforms standing at attention, officers, enlisted support staff, everyone. What is this? Harrison almost smiled. A proper welcome home, Sergeant. For all of you. Rachel walked toward the formation, Cole beside her, the SEAL operators falling in behind them. As she approached, she saw faces she recognized. Soldiers who had mocked her. Officers who had dismissed her. Men and women who had spent months treating her like nothing. They weren't laughing now. General Thompson stood at the front of the formation waiting. When Rachel reached him, she snapped to attention. Sergeant First Class Rachel Morgan, reporting, sir. Thompson didn't acknowledge her salute. Instead, he turned to face the assembled soldiers. 3 years ago, this woman saved the lives of 27 special operators in Afghanistan. She was presumed dead. Her sacrifice was classified. Her name was erased from every official record. The formation listened in absolute silence. 18 months ago, she accepted an assignment that required her to disappear again, to become invisible, to endure ridicule and mockery while she hunted a traitor within our own ranks. Thompson's voice rose. Last night, she coordinated a strike that neutralized a terrorist cell, recovered stolen American weapons, and saved 63 civilian lives. Every operator who went into that compound came home because of her. He turned to Rachel. Sergeant Morgan, your country owes you a debt it can never repay, but we can start with this. He raised his hand in a salute. Behind him, every officer in the formation did the same. Then the enlisted soldiers, then the support staff, then the SEAL operators, then finally the men who had mocked her, the ones who had laughed at her tattoo, the ones who had called her paper pusher, and worse. They saluted too. Hundreds of hands raised in unison, honoring the woman they had dismissed. Rachel felt something break inside her, something she had carried for 3 years, something heavy and dark and terrible. She returned the salute with tears streaming down her face. And in that moment, standing in the morning sun, surrounded by warriors who finally saw her for who she was, Rachel Morgan understood something she had forgotten. She wasn't invisible anymore. She never had been. The salute ended, but Rachel couldn't move. Her arm dropped to her side, trembling. Hundreds of soldiers stood before her, their eyes holding something she hadn't seen in 3 years. Not pity, not confusion. Respect. Pure, undiluted respect. General Thompson lowered his hand and stepped toward her. His voice was quiet now, meant only for her ears. You've earned this, Morgan. Every bit of it. Rachel tried to speak. Failed. Tried again. I don't know what to say, sir. You don't have to say anything. Thompson placed a hand on her shoulder. But there are people waiting for you. People who need to see that you're alive. Rachel's heart seized. Sir, the families of the 3 who died in Afghanistan. Thompson's expression softened. They're here. They flew in this morning. The world tilted beneath Rachel's feet. What? When we confirmed your identity, I made some calls. They deserve to know the truth. Thompson paused. They've been waiting 3 years to meet the woman who tried to save their sons. Rachel felt the blood drain from her face. This was the moment she had dreaded. The moment she had run from for 3 years. Facing the mothers, the fathers, the wives of the men who had died under her watch. I can't. You can. Thompson's grip tightened. And you will, because they need closure, Morgan, and so do you. Cole appeared at her side. He must have heard everything. I'll go with you. Rachel looked at him. Her voice was barely a whisper. Marcus, I don't know if I can do this. Yes, you do. He took her hand. You've been writing to them for 3 years. You've carried them every single day. Now it's time to let them carry you back. The walk to the conference room felt like walking to an execution. Every step was heavy-weighted with guilt and fear in 3 years of silence. Cole stayed beside her, his presence the only thing keeping her moving forward. At the door, she stopped. What if they hate me? They won't. What if they blame me? Then we'll face that together. Cole squeezed her hand, but I just not think that's what's going to happen. He opened the door. 3 families sat inside, 9 people in total, parents, siblings, a young widow holding a photograph. They looked up when Rachel entered, their faces a mixture of hope and grief and desperate need. Rachel recognized them immediately. She had studied their faces in photographs. She had written to them countless times. She knew their names, their struggles, their losses. But she had never stood before them as herself. "Mrs. Patterson," Rachel's voice cracked. "Mr. and Mrs. Reyes, Sarah." The young widow Sarah Chen rose from her chair. Her husband had been Sergeant David Chen, no relation to Private James Chen, but the name had haunted Rachel since the day he died. "You're her," Sarah's voice trembled. "You're the one who wrote those letters." Rachel couldn't deny it. Yes. 3 years. Sarah walked toward her, each step deliberate. 3 years of anonymous letters, birthday cards for my daughter, money that appeared in my account when I couldn't pay rent. That it was all you. I couldn't face you. I thought if you knew who I was, if you knew I was the one who tried to save him. Sarah stopped inches from Rachel, who carried him half a mile with a bullet in your shoulder, who held him while he died and promised him you'd look after his family. Rachel's composure shattered. The tears she had held back for 3 years broke free. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have found another way. I should have." Sarah pulled her into an embrace. The force of it staggered Rachel. She had expected anger, blame, accusations. Instead, she felt arms wrapped around her, holding her tight, refusing to let go. "You brought him home." Sarah's voice was fierce through her own tears. "You made sure we could bury him. You made sure my daughter knows her father was a hero. But he died because evil men tried to kill good ones." Sarah pulled back, holding Rachel's face in her hands. "And he would have died 100 times over if it meant saving the people he loved." Behind them, the other families rose. They moved toward Rachel like a wave, surrounding her, embracing her, speaking words she had never allowed herself to hear. "Thank you for saving the others. Thank you for bringing my son home. Thank you for not forgetting." Rachel stood in the center of them, overwhelmed, broken, finally allowing herself to be held by the people she had been too afraid to face. And for the first time in 3 years, she felt the weight begin to lift. The meeting lasted 3 hours. They talked about everything: the mission, the men who died, the letters Rachel had sent, the ways she had secretly supported them from the shadows. Mrs. Patterson, mother of Corporal James Patterson, showed Rachel photographs of her grandson. "He's 4 now, looks just like his daddy, and thanks to you, he'll never want for anything." Mr. Reyes talked about his son's dreams of becoming a teacher. "He never got to do it, but we started a scholarship in his name. Every year we send a kid to college who wouldn't have gone otherwise." Sarah Chen shared stories of her husband that Rachel had never known. The way he sang in the shower, the terrible jokes he told, the way he always burned the pancakes but refused to let anyone else make breakfast. Rachel listened to every word. She laughed when they laughed, cried when they cried. Let them see her, really see her, for the first time. By the end, something had changed, not just for her, for all of them. "We have something for you," Sarah said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out 3 envelopes. Each one was addressed in familiar handwriting Rachel recognized as her own. "These were the first letters you sent, the ones that arrived right after the memorial service." Sarah handed them to Rachel. "We've read them 1,000 times. They got us through the darkest days." Rachel looked at the letters in her hands, the words she had written in grief and guilt, never knowing if they would bring comfort or pain. "We want you to have them," Sarah continued, "because you need to know what they meant to us. You need to know that every word mattered." Rachel opened the first envelope with trembling fingers. The letter was dated 3 years ago. The handwriting was shaky, blurred in places by tears that had fallen while she wrote. "To the family of Corporal James Patterson, I am writing to tell you that your son was a hero. He died saving others, and his courage will never be forgotten. I cannot give you my name, but I want you to know that someone remembers. Someone will always remember." Rachel couldn't read anymore. The paper shook in her hands. "I didn't know what to say," she whispered. "I didn't know if it would help or make things worse." "It helped." Mrs. Patterson took her hand. "It helped more than you will ever know." The families left that afternoon. Rachel stood on the tarmac watching their vehicles disappear into the distance. She felt hollow and full at the same time, empty of the guilt she had carried, filled with something new, something that felt almost like peace. Cole found her there. "How do you feel?" Rachel considered the question. "I don't know. Different. Good different or bad different. Just different." She turned to face him. "For 3 years I've been running from those families, hiding behind anonymous letters because I was too afraid to face them. And now, now I realize they weren't angry. They were grateful." Rachel shook her head in wonder. "How did I get that so wrong? Grief does strange things to people, makes us see monsters where there aren't any." Cole stepped closer. "You punished yourself for 3 years for something that wasn't your fault. You built a prison out of guilt and locked yourself inside. And now the door is open." He touched her face gently. "The question is, are you ready to walk through it?" Rachel looked into his eyes. She saw patience there, understanding, and something else, something that had been growing since the night in the warehouse when he first recognized her. "I'm ready," she said quietly, "but I don't know how to be anyone except the woman I've been for 3 years. Then we figure it out together." Cole smiled, one day at a time. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of debriefs, reports, and decisions. Walsh's network continued to unravel. His contact, facing decades in prison, provided names, dates, locations. Military intelligence used the information to dismantle operations across 3 continents. Rachel was there for every breakthrough. Her knowledge of the network, accumulated over 18 months of patient observation, proved invaluable. Details that had seemed insignificant suddenly connected. Patterns emerged. The picture grew clearer with each passing day. General Thompson kept his promise. He offered Rachel a permanent position with JSOC, running intelligence operations from a proper facility with a proper team. "No more closets," he said during their final meeting. "No more pretending to be something you're not. We need you, Morgan, the real you." "What about my cover identity?" The logistics sergeant everyone knew. "She was retired with full honors." Thompson almost smiled. Sergeant Rachel Morgan completed her tour with distinction and was reassigned to classified operations. That's the official story. And the unofficial story, that stays between us. Thompson leaned forward. "What do you say?" Rachel thought about it. She thought about the months of silence, the years of hiding the prison she had built for herself. "I have conditions." "Name them." "I want Chen, Private James Chen. He has potential and I want to train him myself." Thompson nodded. "Done. What else?" "I want Commander Cole's team as my primary operational unit. We work well together." "That can be arranged." Rachel hesitated. The final condition was the hardest to voice. "And I want time. 30 days before I start the new assignment. There's something I need to do first." "What kind of something?" "Personal." Rachel met his eyes. "I need to visit a grave. Tell someone I'm still alive." Thompson was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and extended his hand. "Take 60 days. You've earned it." Rachel shook his hand. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet." Thompson's grip tightened. "When you get back, the real work begins." 2 days later, Rachel boarded a plane to Virginia. She hadn't been home in 3 years, hadn't seen her mother, her father, the house she grew up in. They thought she was dead. They had buried an empty coffin and mourned a daughter who was standing in a desert on the other side of the world. Cole offered to come with her. She refused. "This is something I need to do alone." "I understand." He kissed her forehead. "But I'll be here when you get back." "Promise?" "Oh, yeah." "I promise." The flight felt endless. Every mile brought her closer to a confrontation she had avoided for 3 years. What would she say? How could she explain, "Hi, Mom"? "Hi, Dad. I'm not actually dead." Surprise. The words sounded ridiculous even in her head. She rented a car at the airport and drove familiar roads that felt foreign after so long. Everything had changed. New stores, new houses, new people, and yet everything was the same. She parked outside her parents' house just after sunset. The lights were on inside. Through the window, she could see her mother moving in the kitchen preparing dinner. Her father was probably in the living room watching the news like he always did. Rachel sat in the car for an hour. She couldn't make herself move. Couldn't force her hand to open the door, her feet to walk the path, her finger to press the doorbell. What if they rejected her? What if the joy of her return was overshadowed by the pain of her deception? What if they couldn't forgive 3 years of silence? Her phone buzzed, a text from Cole. You can do this. They love you. Nothing changes that. Rachel read the words 3 times. Then she opened the car door. The walk to the front door felt like walking through water. Each step required enormous effort. By the time she reached the porch, her heart was hammering so hard she could barely breathe. She raised her hand to knock. The door opened before she could. Her mother stood there, dish towel in hand, probably coming to check on something outside. For one frozen moment, they simply stared at each other. Then her mother's face crumpled. Rachel. Hi, Mom. The dish towel fell. Her mother's hands flew to her mouth, trembling, tears already streaming down her face. Rachel, my baby girl. She pulled Rachel into her arms with a strength that belied her age. Behind her, footsteps thundered from the living room. Her father appeared older than Rachel remembered, grayer, more fragile. When he saw her, he stopped. His hand gripped the doorframe like it was the only thing holding him up. Is it really you? It's me, Dad. I'm home. He crossed the distance in 3 strides and wrapped both of them in his arms. The 3 of them stood in the doorway crying, holding each other, 3 years of separation dissolving in a single embrace. They told us you were dead, her mother sobbed. They gave us a flag. They played taps. We buried an empty box because there was nothing left. I know, and I'm so sorry. Rachel's voice broke. I wanted to tell you. Every day for 3 years I wanted to tell you the truth. But I couldn't. The mission, the cover, everything. I don't care about missions. Her father's voice was rough with emotion. I don't care about covers or secrets or any of it. All I care about is that you're alive, that my daughter is alive. They stood there for a long time, unwilling to let go, afraid that if they separated, she might disappear again. Finally, her mother pulled back. She cupped Rachel's face in her hands, studying every feature, memorizing her all over again. Are you staying? For a while, I have some time before my next assignment. Assignment? Her father's eyes narrowed. You're still in the military. I am, but it's different now. Rachel took a breath. I can tell you some of what happened. Not everything, but some, if you want to hear it. We want to hear everything. Her mother led her inside, hand clutching Rachel's like she was afraid to let go. Everything you can tell us. They talked through the night. Rachel told them what she could, about Operation Silent Thunder, about the men she saved and the men she lost, about the 3 years she spent hiding the investigation that brought her back, the mission that almost cost her everything. Her parents listened without interruption. They cried when she told them about Afghanistan. They raged when she described Walsh's betrayal. They held her when she talked about the families, about the letters, about the guilt she had carried for so long. By dawn, however, Rachel felt lighter than she had in years. The secrets weren't gone, but they were shared now. The burden was distributed. She wasn't carrying it alone anymore. I have something to show you, her mother said as the sun rose. She led Rachel to the backyard, to a small garden that hadn't existed 3 years ago. In the center stood a stone memorial engraved with Rachel's name, her dates of birth and supposed death in a single line of text. She gave everything so others could live. Rachel knelt before the stone. Her fingers traced the letters of her own name. We come here every day, her father said quietly. Talk to you, tell you about our lives. It was the only way we could stay close to you. I'm so sorry. Rachel's voice was barely audible. I'm so sorry I put you through this. Don't be sorry. Her mother knelt beside her. You were doing what you believed was right. That's all we ever wanted for you. Rachel stayed in Virginia for 3 weeks. She reconnected with her parents, rebuilding the relationship that distance and deception had strained. She visited old friends who wept when they saw her alive. She walked the streets of her childhood and remembered who she had been before the war changed everything. And she began to heal. Not completely. Some wounds never fully close. But the bleeding stopped. The pain became manageable. The guilt transformed into something she could live with. On her last night home, her mother gave her a package. What's this? Open it. Rachel unwrapped the paper to find a framed photograph. It showed her as a child, maybe 7 or 8, standing in the backyard with a butterfly net. Her face was bright with joy, unmarked by war or loss or secrets. That's who you were, her mother said. Before everything, before the army, before Afghanistan, before any of it, she touched Rachel's face. That girl is still in there, Rachel. Don't let the darkness take her away completely. Rachel held the photograph against her chest. I won't, Mom, I promise. She returned to Camp Sentinel on a Tuesday. Cole was waiting on the tarmac when her plane landed. He looked exactly the same, steady, solid, real. Rachel walked toward him and didn't stop until she was in his arms. How did it go? Better than I expected. She pulled back to look at him. They forgave me. I don't know how, but they forgave me. Of course they did. They love you. I know that now. Rachel smiled. It felt strange on her face, unfamiliar after so long. I'm ready, Marcus. Ready to stop running. Ready to be who I really am. And who is that? Rachel thought about the question. About everything she had been and everything she had become. Someone who saves people. Someone who fights for what's right. She paused. Someone who isn't afraid to be seen anymore. Cole pulled her close. That's the woman I fell in love with. Rachel froze. What did you say? You heard me. Cole's eyes held hers. I've been in love with you since Afghanistan. Since you looked me in the eye and told me to trust your math. Since you crawled through a minefield and carried my men to safety. His voice softened. I've spent 3 years thinking you were dead, Morgan. I'm not wasting another second pretending I don't feel what I feel. Rachel's heart pounded. Marcus, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. He touched her face. Whatever comes next, I'm with you. All the way. Rachel looked at him. This man who had saved her as surely as she had saved him. This man who had seen her at her worst and still believed in her best. I love you too, she said quietly. Cole's smile lit up his entire face. Yeah. Rachel laughed, surprised by the sound of her own joy. Took me long enough to admit it. Better late than never. 1 week later, Rachel Morgan received her official promotion. Warrant Officer Rachel Morgan, Intelligence Operations. The ceremony was small, private, attended only by those who knew the truth. General Thompson presented the insignia. Commander Cole pinned them to her collar, but the most significant moment came afterward. The survivors of Operation Silent Thunder gathered in a room at the edge of the base. 27 men who had lived because of Rachel's courage 3 years ago. They came from across the country, across the world, dropping everything to be present for what happened next. Rachel sat in a chair at the center of the room, her sleeve rolled up to expose her forearm. A tattoo artist worked carefully, adding 3 small stars beneath the black orchid. One for Corporal James Patterson, one for Sergeant David Chen, one for Staff Sergeant Michael Reyes, the men who didn't come home. They're part of you now, Cole said, watching the artist work. Permanently. They always were. Rachel's voice was steady despite the pain. This just makes it visible. When the tattoo was complete, the survivors formed a line. One by one, they approached Rachel. One by one, they rolled up their own sleeves, revealing the black orchids they had worn since that night in the valley. We carry them too, Cole said. All of us. Together. Rachel looked at the men surrounding her, warriors who had followed her voice through darkness, brothers who had trusted her with their lives. Thank you, she said, for believing in me, for never giving up. Thank you for bringing us home. Cole raised his arms, showing his orchid to the room. Phantom orchid forever. The others echoed the words. Phantom orchid forever. Rachel felt the tears coming and didn't fight them. For once, they weren't tears of grief or guilt. They were tears of belonging. Chen found her alone on the rooftop that evening. Permission to join you, ma'am, Rachel smiled. How many times do I have to tell you to call me Rachel? At least once more. Chen sat down beside her, legs dangling over the edge. I heard about the ceremony, the tattoo. Word travels fast. It's a small base. He was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why me? Of all the people you could have picked to help with the investigation, why did you trust me? Rachel considered the question. Because you reminded me of someone. Who, myself, before Afghanistan, before everything. She looked at him. You were scared, Chen, terrified. But you did the right thing anyway. That's rare. That's valuable. I didn't feel valuable. I felt like I was going to throw up. That's exactly my point, Rachel laughed softly. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being afraid and doing it anyway. You had that from the first moment I met you. Chen was silent, processing her words. What happens now, he asked finally. With the new assignment? Now we go to work. Rachel stood brushing dust from her uniform. General Thompson has a new operation, something big. He wants us both on the team. Both of us. You're my first recruit, Chen. Don't make me regret it. Chen scrambled to his feet, eyes wide. I won't, ma'am, Rachel. I won't let you down. I know you won't. She started toward the stairs, then paused. And Chen? The next time someone underestimates you, remember this moment. Remember what you're capable of. Yes, ma'am. Good, now get some sleep. We have a briefing at 0600. She disappeared down the stairs, leaving Chen alone on the rooftop. He looked out over Camp Sentinel, the base that had been transformed by one woman's courage, the place where he had learned what it meant to serve something greater than himself. Then he smiled and headed for his bunk. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The final morning of Rachel's time at Camp Sentinel dawned clear and bright. She stood in the main yard bag, packed ready to board the transport that would take her to her new assignment. Around her, soldiers moved through their routines, most of them unaware of who she was or what she had done. But some of them knew, and they stopped to watch as she walked toward the helicopter. Colonel Harrison was there to see her off. You changed this base, Morgan, more than you'll ever know. I just did my job, sir. No, you did much more than that. He extended his hand. It's been an honor. Rachel shook it firmly. The honor was mine, Colonel. Cole waited by the helicopter, already in gear, ready for whatever came next. You sure about this? He asked as she approached. New assignment, new team, new dangers. I've never been more sure of anything. Rachel looked back at Camp Sentinel one final time. This is who I am, Marcus. Who I was always meant to be. Then let's go save some lives. They climbed into the helicopter together. The rotors spun up, lifting them into the sky. Below, the soldiers of Camp Sentinel watched them go. Some saluted, some simply stood in silence, bearing witness to a departure that felt like the end of an era. Chen was among them. He watched until the helicopter disappeared over the horizon. Then he turned and walked back toward the base. There was work to do, training to complete, a legacy to live up to. Rachel Morgan had shown him what courage looked like. Now it was his turn to carry it forward. In the helicopter, Rachel watched the desert scroll beneath them. Miles of sand and rock and possibility. Cole reached over and took her hand. What are you thinking about? Everything. Nothing. She smiled slightly. The people who laughed at my tattoo, the people who thought I was nobody, the looks on their faces when they finally understood. They'll never make that mistake again. No, they won't. Rachel turned to face him. But that's not the point, is it? What's the point? The point is that it never mattered what they thought. What mattered was what I knew about myself. She touched the orchid on her forearm. This tattoo wasn't for them. It was never for them. It was for me, for the men I saved, for the men I lost, for everyone who ever doubted that strength could be quiet. Cole squeezed her hand. And now I don't need their respect to know who I am. Rachel looked out the window at the endless sky. I am Rachel Morgan. I am Phantom Orchid. I am a warrior, an intelligence officer, and a survivor. I carry the dead with me every day, and I fight for the living every night. She turned back to Cole, her eyes bright with purpose. They laughed at my tattoo. They thought it was weakness. But that orchid was a mark of fire, of sacrifice, of strength that never needed to announce itself. The helicopter flew on, carrying them toward new battles, new challenges, new chances to make a difference. Behind them, Camp Sentinel grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. But the legend of the woman with the black orchid remained, and it would never be forgotten. True strength doesn't shout. It doesn't demand recognition. It doesn't need applause to know its worth. True strength is the quiet voice that speaks when everyone else is silent. It is the steady hand that holds when others let go. It is the heart that keeps beating when the world says stop. Rachel Morgan understood this better than anyone. She had been invisible. She had been mocked. She had been dismissed and forgotten and left for dead. And she had risen anyway. Not for glory, not for medals, not for the salutes that finally came, but for the ones who couldn't rise anymore, for the fallen, for the families, for every person who ever looked at her and saw nothing. She carried them all with her, every name, every face, every sacrifice, and she always would. Because that's what real heroes do. They carry the weight so others don't have to. They walk through fire so others can walk through peace. And they never ever stop fighting for what matters. Rachel Morgan was proof that the quietest person in the room could also be the strongest. And now the whole world knew it.